Hello everybody and welcome back to another Sunday special, as we call them here. Basically what I do every Sunday is I go through the market and I go through some of the major currency pairs and talk about potential setups or trade ideas for the week ahead. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the technicals as well as some of the brief fundamentals on some of these currency pairs that I am watching, and hopefully we can find some sort of trade setups or at least some ideas to look out for going into the week ahead. Before I go any further, please remember that this is not necessarily financial advice or anything like that. This is just my analysis and my ideas, and you should do your own due diligence before you place any trades. Without further ado, if you would, please like the video down below and let's get into the video. Okay, so let's start with the big one, of course, Euro USD. This is, if you're not familiar, the most heavily traded financial instrument in the world, not just in the currency market, but the entire world, stock markets. You know, the most volume goes through the euro dollar. And it's not necessarily because it's just being traded. It's because companies and, things around the world need the euro and the dollar, right? So these are two major currencies being transacted at a very high rate, if you will, which causes a lot of volatility and a lot of, or not necessarily volatility, but a lot of movement in terms of money amount through this major pair. So when we're looking at the euro dollar, last week we had a very interesting little technical perspective where we had, buyers were able to hold their own here, but towards the end of the week, we had some really strong push on the US dollar, right? And this is the main reason why the US dollar going up, why people have been selling off the euro and buying into the USD. Well, why is that? Well, we got a little bit of market volatility. If we briefly pull up the S&P 500, you can actually see that we got a little bit of a dip on the stock market side of things, which anytime this happens, generally speaking, as bonds become more favorable, and this is kind of the big catalyst as we saw a favor in bonds over stocks for the first time in a little bit, right? That tends to cause what we call a risk off environment. Basically, this is where people are moving their money into less concerning things, I guess, because they're wanting more confidence in their investments, right? It's kind of like if you're not sure what the global outlook is going to be and you're not very positive about it, generally speaking, you're going to be more on the conservative side. Well, same thing with most of the world, right? People move their money into the more safe havens, as we call them, during these times, favoring things like the US dollar, the Japanese yen, and the Swiss franc. Stay tuned, because if we look at any of those Swiss franc and Japanese yen pairs, you'll see that they actually got a pretty strong buy up last week. Okay, so back to the Euro USD. Again, with the stock market dipping like that, that is generally considered a potential move into risk-off investments as opposed to risk-on investments, things like stocks and more up-and-coming economies like the Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar, those sort of things. So where do we go from here with the Euro USD? Well, if we continue to see bearishness going into this week in terms of people moving their money towards risk-off assets, then the big thing to me that's going to be interesting is going to be seeing if we can actually really break this trend line from a technical perspective. And really, I think we're probably going to retest the lows here to see if buyers have the strength to hold this. I think that that's probably a pretty good, idea this week if we see continued bearishness. First magnet area is going to be the 1.2, because this 1.2 level has been very much so kind of a major talking point in the technical perspective for a long time on the euro dollar. Back here, we were struggling to get above 1.2 for a long time. You can see, I would say it's not necessarily coincidence that price came up to that 1.2 mark and continued to try and come back down. Sellers were trying to hold their own, but then ultimately buyers broke through, where people said, no, we want the euro to go higher. We want to sell the US dollar because inflation is higher on the US dollar, right? Anyways, as we come into this week, again, I think we're probably due to retest that area to see if buyers are still willing to hold this. So I think if there's any short-term trade, I would say that there's probably some short-term bearishness on the euro here from me. Now, long-term, I am still bullish on the euro dollar. And we'll back out of here and we'll go over to the fundamental data page on my website, A1 Trading. You can go to this URL, or you can basically go to my website and just go to the trade ideas and then fundamental data. And if you bookmark this page, you can come back to it anytime you want. Anyways, if we go down to inflation, this has kind of been the lead reason I've been mostly bullish on Euro USD. From a fundamental perspective, you can see that inflation here is higher for the US dollar, whereas it is a bit lower, and even it was negative for a bit on the euro. Why does that matter? Well, what does inflation do to a currency? It causes it to go down in value, right? Because it becomes weaker. When you print more of a currency, it creates inflation. And so as this is higher than this, very simple, right? This is causing the US dollar to be weak and the euro to be stronger relatively. Not necessarily saying that the euro economy is, super strong or anything like that, but when you're talking about inflation, it makes sense that the US dollar being weaker has been an overall bearish bias for me. However, with most recent stuff going on, with a little bit of fear in the risk on, risk off world, it's very likely that we could see, people flock to the dollar should things go south. So that's something that I will be looking out for and watching catalysts of, any news catalysts, if you will, or big things that could cause the market to continue to change directions a little bit here. Again, this is the 4-hour chart, but if we back out, you can see we've been on a very strong bullish trend here on the euro for a while, and watching to see if buyers can hold major areas is going to be a pretty good indicator in terms of technical analysis to look for reversals or trend continuation. But again, for me, still bullish on the dollar, and I think that a retest of this area here, that 1.2 level, is probably an area that I'd be more interested in looking for long setups if we get some sort of confirmation. Before I continue, we are actually doing a 25% off sale on our community. So any trades that I take, I share inside of the A1 trading community, and there's chat rooms, trade ideas, and we also do live webinars. And Joe is he's one of our coaches inside of the group. He's a 13-year trade veteran. He lives in Australia, and he's a really nice guy. He's actually doing a couple more live streams just for members this week, where they're going to be doing like live trading together, like actually talking about positions and kind of intraday stuff. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you want to sign up, there's actually a 25% off code down below in the description. If you do YTVIP, you'll get a promo code that you can plug in and get discount if you want to join our community. If you don't, that's fine. But if you do want to and you've been waiting to, this is probably the best chance you're going to get there for a while. So use YTVIP down below in the description. Click that link. I think it's 25% off our gold membership and a couple bucks off our just monthly membership. So either ways, check it out, see if it's a fit for you. Anyways, let's continue. All right, let's do pound dollar and see what's going on with the pound. So the pound was really interesting last week because if you guys are watching my live streams, then you know that, we've talked about the pound and why, even though I really wanted to be a bull on this trend here, I was not going to chase. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't, right? Because although it might have worked to chase right here, and it might have worked to chase right here, if you were chasing up here, you had a really, really rough end of the week, right? And I unfortunately know a couple people who they got caught up chasing this market. And this is dangerous because this is exactly why I don't chase, is because when we get into this major up movement, what tends to happen is when volatility spikes like this, volatility being high, meaning that we get big moves, can go in your favor, and that's great, but it can also go away from you very, very quickly. And so anybody who was long all up in this area, if they held, they were in trouble, right? And so this is why, to me, it's just like, okay, I would rather wait for an opportunity to get long on a retest, which actually looks like we may have that opportunity this week. And so what I was eyeballing this week on stream was this 61.8 area here. If price retests that could line up with the trend line. I am still a bull overall on the pound dollar for similar reasons to the euro, but the pound has actually been performing a little bit better than the euro. If we just cross those two, euro pound, we can see that overall there's been a nice downtrend as people have been selling the euro in favor of the pound. Part of the reason there is because I know the pound, the United Kingdom had a nice bounce back compared to other places. Now we're all in trouble with the whole pandemic situation, right? But it's more about which is the best of the worst, if you will. And so people are tending to sell off that euro and buy the pound. So when we go back to something like pound dollar, again, you're seeing a pullback here, pretty strong one, in fact, because of everything going on with just kind of market concerns. When you get those market concerns, again, the first thing you're going to see is usually you're going to see the pound get sold off, and people are going to favor the big safe haven, that US dollar, those Japanese yen, right? The Japanese yen. In fact, if we quickly look at JPY crossed against the pound, you can see it also gave back some of its gains there. Not as much as pound dollar, though. It seems like people really moved to the US dollar there. Interesting stuff there. If you're not already tuning into our streams, by the way, we do streams at 9 a.m. US Eastern, Monday through Friday, and I go through the markets and kind of while the market's live. Right now, the market is not yet open, but I'm just going through some of my bigger picture ideas and just taking my time here. So pound dollar, 4-hour chart, a pullback to the 61.8 looks pretty interesting to me, looking to go long. That's something that I will be looking for. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, please remember this is not financial advice. I'm not telling you, oh, here's a signal, go buy it here. I'm telling you my ideas and my concepts and why I think that way, so that maybe you can get some sort of value out of it. But at the end of the day, I'm not telling you to do what to do with your money. You should make your own decisions. And I say that on the stream pretty often as well, because our main goal here is to figure this stuff out, right? It's to do it for ourselves, because you can't just copy your way to success in trading, unfortunately. That's my belief. Maybe somebody will disagree with me. They'll say, oh, well, you could just copy this or that signal provider. But signals, the problem is, if you're just looking to copy signals, when it's going right, when it's going well, you get excited, you get overly optimistic, and what tends to happen for a lot of traders is they over leverage and they put a lot of money on trades until it goes really, really poorly all of a sudden, and then they're like, oh man, it doesn't work, I got to find a new signal provider. So they go signal provider to signal provider to signal provider, and what they finally realize is, oh wait, everybody takes losses, right? These are our different signal providers. And what's more important is understanding why they're taking losses, why there's drawdowns in trading. Like, that's the thing that people who just copy signals, they don't understand, is they don't understand what drawdown is. They don't understand that, losses happen. Anyways, side rant for you there. Gold is looking bearish here, guys. Gold has really, really impressed me. And unfortunately, I took a long trade at this area. I closed it already. It was a small loss there. But I thought we would get a bounce off of this again. But we very quickly retested the bounce area, had my buy in there, got tagged into it, and immediately went against me. So just another poor trade, unfortunately. I'm currently, if you guys haven't seen my community tab or anything like that, I've been in a little bit of a drawdown myself. Took a couple losses this week and ended up February negative, which is unfortunate, but just part of trading. So where do we go from here with gold? Well, I think that the big thing here is that I'm still a bull on gold, but I'm going to put that on pause until I see some sort of sign that there is bulls. There are other bulls, right? I don't want to be the only bull in a bear market. So I'm going to say that the big area to me that I've been keeping an eye on is around that 1690 to 1660 level. This area, you can see, historically was a pretty big consolidation. If we just go back to this period of time, you can see that it was a big barrier for sellers trying to get, and I remember this time, they were trying to get it up to that $1,700 mark. It was a very, sought after move to the upside there. And we were struggling to get there. Price kept falling after coming up, and finally we broke out, and then that level pretty much became the basis from where we jumped into the stratosphere for a little while, right? So as we pull back to that area, I think that buyers who were long gold all during this time will likely want to try and hold that area, that the big area being around 1650 to 1700. I think that this area has potential to be a bullish bounce area, but what I'm going to do is I'll probably be watching gold to see if we can get a drop more. I would like to buy this. However, I'd like to see some sort of confirmation or some sort of higher low, something on gold to show me that there are buyers in this area, because I don't just want to buy right as this thing kind of continues to drop. I'd rather wait to see, okay, is there something here? Okay, maybe there's room. Okay, we jump into a long and try and go up there. So again, tune into my streams. I'll give you guys more up-to-date stuff on gold. I'll probably talk about it plenty of times this week ahead. So tune into the streams there if you'd like to see more on that. But again, I'll be watching this area to see if we can get a dip down to that area. Finally, let's talk about dollar yen. So dollar yen, I have a bullish bias on right now. Look at that. We broke through resistance towards the end of the week there. So people really flocking to the dollar, which is interesting to me. I would have thought that the yen would have gained some strength there at the end of the week, but I guess I was wrong. Anyways, I'll have to do more research on that from the fundamental perspective. We could take a look at it real quick just to see. So inflation rates, we'll take a quick look here so you can see deflation for the pound there, which is actually bullish for the currency, right? It causes, when you deflate your currency, it causes the currency to become more expensive, right? And this causes weakness, right? Higher inflation. So that's interesting for the US dollar. That would be considered more, bearish bias just based on that. But there's more to it than just that. You can also see that unemployment rates for the yen are lower, which I think is interesting as well. Interesting. Let me double check this. Is this? Yeah. Japan unemployment rate. Yeah. Kind of interesting that they've kind of stayed steady while the US has kind of declined there. Let's also look, of course, one major bullish thing for the US dollar over the yen is the fact that this offers negative interest rates, right? So what that means is that if you store your money in Japanese yens, you lose money over time, like on top of inflation, right? So in the US, however, you get positive interest. And it's very slight, so don't think it's like a big thing or anything like that. Wouldn't it be nice to capture 6% back in 2000? But now we see that interest is at 0.25 for the U.S., which is slightly preferable over the minus. Is it minus 0.75? No, that's the Swiss franc. It's minus 0.10 interest rate in Japan. So by buying this, you're gaining this. By buying this, you're losing this. So generally speaking, that causes more interest over here, right? No pun intended, but more interest, literally. Okay. Some people cringed in the audience, I'm sure. So again, kind of a mixed bias there for me. I would like to, more recently we have seen some good numbers come out for the U.S. Things like retail sales were very good, I think, a week ago. Kind of, a little bit better than expected. But also we can take a look here. You can see that the United States has bounced back very well, comparatively speaking. So that may be a very bullish thing for the U.S. compared to Japan, right? You can see in terms of GDP, gross domestic product is a monetary measure of the market value of all the final goods and services produced in a specific time period. Yeah, so we had a strong bounce back there in the GDP for the U.S. And I know, just generally speaking, the U.S. bounced back very well in terms of GDP compared to a lot of the other economies out there. But you can see that may be a bullish catalyst also for the U.S. dollar. So people tend to be flocking back into the U.S. dollar right now and even selling the yen in favor of the U.S. dollar, which is definitely interesting. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for me. Like I said, tune into our streams live if you want to see more stuff with me and take a look at the markets. These are not super formal streams, just like this video is not super formal. I'm just going through my ideas for the week and looking at ideas. I guess my last thing to say for the dollar yen is, any sort of pullback here, I'd probably be more on the buy side just because, again, going with that momentum, we're forming these higher lows. We're above the 200 period moving average, as we've mentioned on stream. That's a big one for me on the daily chart. And overall, we've broken through pretty key resistance. That supply zone that we marked completely turned green. So as I look at it, I'd probably be interested in buying the dollar yen. Again, GDP bounced back. A couple different fundamental catalysts there, but also just going with that trend that we see most recently. Things on the counter trend have turned into what I would start to see as a dominant trend here to the upside if that continues to form higher highs and higher lows. So again, probably for me worth buying, any sort of dip here or pullback, trying to go for that. Again, like always, this is not a signal to go copy and not think about, but rather just my thoughts and analysis. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Like I said earlier in the video, join us inside of the premium group if you have any interest and you've been watching my videos and content. If you want to work closer to myself and the rest of my team, we have traders inside sharing their trades as well as my own trades with full reasoning. So you'll see, anytime I take a trade, I share the whole reasons. It's not meant to just be like I said, a copy service or anything like that. If this sounds helpful to you, you can jump in our chat rooms. You can get our trade ideas, webinars, all sorts of good stuff. And again, like I said, there is a promo code down below in the description if you want to get 25% off our gold VIP membership. It's 25% off just for the gold membership, but that's kind of the all-in package deal. So I would check that one out because it's the one we want people to go for the most because it basically gives you the most for the least amount of money. Anyways, thank you guys very much for joining me on today's video. I hope you have a great trading week and a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you back this week.